You've dealt with more than one mentor, and I'm sure you've dealt with good ones, and I'm sure you've dealt with bad ones. So, in the broadest sense, what do you think makes a good mentor?
And I would be talking about and giving her advice, uh, and she would just be like, "You graduated so long ago, like I don't even want your advice." And I'm like, "I'm not that much older than
Oh,
you." But again, like people want someone maybe 5 years older than them, especially with the way that standards work. Even like getting your PE and the FE, like that's changed, right? So like
yes.
really a lot of people that are looking for mentorship, they're like, hey, I want a mentor to help me get through the PE. Like, so that's all things that they want someone current.
Welcome to the 21st Century Engineer podcast. For those of you that have been with us before, or if you're a first timer, uh, you're all welcome. And I hope that you find our conversation today to be beneficial in your attempts to improve on your skill set, strengthen your professional aptitudes, and be the kind of successful change agent that you desire to be. After all, that's why we do this. Um, the conversation today is going to be focused on a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and should be near and dear to yours as well, because this idea of you growing and developing into a really dynamic leader, manager, professional in the AEC community requires, in many cases, I would advocate in all cases, a mentor. And so we're going to have a conversation today. Tirza Austin and I have been around ASCE for a while. I'll let her throw years on it. I don't do years. I'm past the point. I even advocate for abolishing birthdays. So don't worry about that. But Tirza convinced me many years ago to get involved in the mentoring program that she runs for ASCE, and I found it to be quite dynamic. I got involved again last year in a different facet of it. The ASCE is putting more energy into and developing a more dynamic structure, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But Tirza, thanks for being here. It's a real pleasure to see you, and I appreciate the time that you're willing to invest and share with those that have logged in or signed in or viewing us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dennis. Like, I really
Yeah.
appreciate you having me today. And I really appreciate all the time that you've spent within the mentoring program, because mentoring is no easy feat. And having great mentors is really the key to a successful mentoring program. So thanks so much for having me.
Oh no, my pleasure. You're going to do the heavy lifting on this. I'm just sitting
Uh-oh.
back, kind of riding along. For those that are listening, could you kind of frame up how you got involved with mentoring and what your background is with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do run our online community program at ASCE. I work on our communications team. And I am in charge of the mentoring program that we have. Really, the mentoring program at ASCE kind of has a long history. And so there is actually a committee called the Committee on Professional Advancement that had started this mentoring program, and a lot of the frameworks that we still use today is from that committee. As far as some of their best practices, some of their recommendations, the resources that we have and that we provide are all from the Committee on Professional Advancement. So that's absolutely fantastic. And then it was actually part of um, the ASC leadership team um, that actually wanted to make mentoring a key strategic initiative, because it is so important it's important to everyone, no matter what industry you're in, but it's especially important to engineers in general. So that's why the mentoring program kind of took um, really a key part of what we were focusing on some of the things that we were rolling out as far as membership benefits. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And leadership at ASCE. has backed the program because they know this is a key issue. So let's talk a little bit about the key issue, and we're talking about the challenges and opportunities facing young engineers, pre-professionals, mid-level professionals in our environment, in the professional environment, not just civil engineers, but all professionals, architects, engineers, contractors, everybody's working in the civil infrastructure environment, at least, if not all the professionals, doctors, lawyers, what have you, face various versions, various challenges and opportunities. And mentoring can help with that. Could you shine your light on what you see as the challenges and opportunities that mentoring helps these young professionals address?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a key issue. Like young professionals, a lot of times you try different things and you really just are trying to find your niche. And you're trying to figure out where you want to go. And a lot of the young engineers that I talk to, they're like, oh, like, especially in college, you sit down, at a table with students and you say, hey, like, what discipline are you going into? They don't know. They don't really understand the difference in disciplines at that point. They're juniors, they're sophomores, they don't really understand. And a lot of them are like, oh yeah, I tried, an internship in wastewater and I didn't really like that. And but maybe they like, so it's really kind of trying to find your niche and then what you want to do. And I think once you get to be a mid-level professional, probably someone. Actually, I'm a little bit old at this point. I won't reveal my age, but maybe people that are 5 years younger than me are kind of at that crossing roads where they're like, do I want to pursue technical or do I want to pursue management? And so there's all these different career paths, and as far as what people find that they enjoy, they don't enjoy. And I think mentoring really is a place to have somebody to mentor you, right? Like, and be like, okay, so you like this, you like that, try this, try that, like, to really kind of find your path as far as where you're going. And I think that's really the biggest challenge, and really the biggest thing that mentoring can solve is someone that can really help you find your path and really guide you on that way.
And I think that's really important. This idea of finding not just your aptitude, but what I oftentimes reframe as your passion
Mhm.
uh, for an aspect of a profession. I mean, when we talk about professionals, to me, the biggest difference between a professional and a non-professional is whether you look at what you're doing as a career or a job. Um, Not to say that baristas at Starbucks don't consider that a career, and more power to them, but for me, engineering was a career, and as such, I was all in. I found it fit into my life. It fit into my work life. It worked in my family life, my social life, which is probably why I am the way I am. Oh well. Uh, Mentoring can correct that or accentuate it depending upon what you are or who you are. And I think that it's a really important piece. The question then becomes, and I have again been around the block, as you have, not as many times around the block as I have, but I've seen people put mentoring programs together which were pretty ad hoc. Just go forth and mentor, and then I've seen like your program where there's a certain amount of formal mentoring that goes on. It has metrics, it has expectations, it has accountability, if you will, and that's accountability not just on the mentor but on the mentee as well to engage and do things. Have you seen the same kind of thing? Do you feel that what ASCE and what you are doing in particular, as far as formalizing and structuring and framing out the mentoring process, has real value, or just go find somebody and say, "Be my mentor"?
So that's a great question. I mean, I think there's many different types of mentoring relationships and many different types of mentoring programs. They're all great. They all have their own value. But really, a formalized program like we put together with ASCE is really trying to figure out um, kind of that framework. And I think a lot of times as engineers specifically is you want that framework. Like
Yeah,
it
we
is
call
something
it
that
boundary limits.
Like
I can't do less than I can't do more than. Set me up in a box.
people want,
Yeah.
like, okay, here's the checklist. Okay, do this, do this, do this. And honestly, like, I've participated in a lot of programs myself, and I'm honestly not a good mentee. I'll raise my hand and say I'm a terrible mentee, because really the onus is on the mentee to say, these are the expectations, these are my goals, set the agenda, prepare things ahead of time. That's really on the mentee to do that. And we really try to do that within the ASC mentoring program, to give mentees the ability to do that. And I've had lots of conversations with lots of different associations and organizations as far as their mentoring programs. And really, I think across the board, like, you expect the mentee to take on the responsibility there. If you have someone like yourself, Dennis, if I were to come to you and say, "Hey, can you mentor me?" Um, you're a busy guy. Like, you're not gonna babysit me and be like, "Hey, like, let's do X, Y, and Z." Like, they're really, like, it's on me. And um, it's really important for the mentee to set those expectations within the ASC program. We have a partnership policy, which I think
Right.
the first thing I will say to people, if you are going to go into a mentoring relationship, you need to sit down, discuss expectations, discuss your partnership policy. How many times are we going to meet? Who's going to provide the agenda? How long will we meet for? What are my goals? Like, all of those things are really on the mentee to say, these are the expectations. This is what we want to come out of this relationship. How long, like, again, will it be a 6-month relationship? Will it be a 9-month relationship? Will it be a year? Those are all part of, like, a formal mentoring relationship that is really, really important for it to be successful. If you're kind of like in the wind, wishy washy, you won't get anything out of it.
And I think that's real value. The valid, excuse me, is value too. The I'll add, as in as much as I was never mentored, not in a classical sense, not in a true sense, I had individuals who mentored me. When I was running for ASCE president, I had people ask me, unfortunately, in an open forum with 300 people in the room, tell me who your 3 mentors were. And it was like, oh, let me think about this. And I had to admit, I did have mentors, but it wasn't a formal mentoring program. But what I wanted to add is, going back to what you said, a lot of times I have found that individuals who want to be mentored don't really have the structure to be mentored. And so the mentor can come in and say, okay, yeah, again, what are your goals? What is it why are you doing this? Is it, as an administrator at the university for 15 years, they had a mentoring program. It consisted of me picking somebody on the faculty who had rank to pair them up with somebody who had just come to the faculty that didn't have much of anything and say, okay, go forth and be mentored. And it was like, yeah, that it was a failure. But I didn't know better. It's not my fault. I only did what I knew to do. I know better now, thanks to you. Seriously, I know better now, thanks to you, in your program. And one of the first things I did with one of my first ASE mentor was sit down and say, what are your issues? What are your problems? Where do you want to go? And we developed a list of uh, these are my career goals. These are my today's problems. Now, how do we want to rank these in terms of what do we want to deal with? We can be dealing with career goals while we're dealing with the fact that you have to hire and fire somebody today. We can talk about the fact that you want to become a principal in an organization and what that might involve and how you maneuver that while you're dealing with the fact that one of the principals of the organization is a bigot. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we dealt with in that first iteration, and
Mhm.
we did not set a timeline. We set basically a completion, much like a construction project. When the project's finished, it's finished, and if we need to come back and do some touch up, well, we can always do that, and did. We went on for about 2 years. With a pretty routine schedule and addressing new problems that weren't on the original list and taking other stuff off the list as it got solved. So the mentor could be a part of that process and part of that evaluation, setting up those goals, providing that structure,
Mhm.
which really even the mentor needs. Yeah, if the mentor is not engaged, as you said, that we're all busy, so it can slide, and that doesn't do anybody any good. So yeah, great deal. Let's pivot just a little bit and you have dealt with, I have no idea how many mentors. I know you've dealt with one, me, good, bad, or indifferent, and I'm asking you not to share any of that. but you've dealt with more than one mentor, and I'm sure you've dealt with good ones, and I'm sure you've dealt with bad ones. So, in the broadest sense, what do you think makes a good mentor?
Oh goodness, that's such a loaded question.
I know that's why I get to ask.
I mean,
Break it down this way. Okay, is it better? Let's try it this way. Is it better for older professionals to be mentors, or do you think younger? Let's parse this out. Or would it be better to have
so
somebody more mid-career, somebody that's I'm going to frame as a little more current with the condition of what you went through in school and the transition issues?
yeah, Dennis, I'm gonna have a hot take on this one because I know this is gonna be a little bit controversial.
Don't mention name.
When we started the ASC mentoring program, I know I even remember having conversations with some ASCE like leadership on the board and
Yeah, me.
executive staff, not you, someone else that I'm thinking of specifically. Um, and even executive staff that was like, hey, let's get life members involved.
Ooh,
Um, and like let's send it out, let's recruit life members to
yeah.
to be the mentors in this
I do.
program, and
I
that
remember that. That was crazy. I just looked at it and said, "Oh well, maybe the program will
and
survive."
and we did. We sent out a lot of like campaigns and we tried to get the life members involved in the program. And that's great. And honestly, I know of a lot of life members that have been absolutely there's one gentleman that I'm thinking of specifically um, that has absolutely done a fantastic job in the ASC program. Who
You're
he
welcome.
loves mentor. I'm not gonna name him, but he loves mentoring international students.
Oh, yeah,
And that's one that a lot of you know, our domestic members are kind of a little bit touchy about mentoring people internationally. And he's actually done a really great job. And he's actually taken some of these people under his wing and published papers with them. So he's joint authored papers with some of his mentors within the
good.
ASC mentoring program and has fantastic and that's exactly, but he loves that because that's really giving back, right? And
Right.
he's a fantastic person and he really loves the profession and he really loves helping these people, um and really just preparing them for the real world. But anyway, so with that, we recruited a lot of life members to be involved with the ASC mentoring program. And then as we're looking at the analytics and we're looking at the data as far as people who were being requested as mentors, no one was requesting those life members, right? So, um, the people that were being requested were those mid-level professionals because you want someone right behind you.
Right.
And I'll even use myself as an example. Like, I've been out of college now for probably 15 years, I
15
guess, if I
hours.
do the
Yeah,
math.
15 hours. We're not.
15 hours.
Yeah, people can do math on this program.
um, so but I remember when my sister just graduated from George. Well, my sister graduated from George Mason about 2 years ago. She's 11 years younger than me, and I would be talking about and giving her advice, and she would just be like, "You graduated so long ago, like I don't even want your advice." And I'm like, "I'm not that much older than
Oh,
you," but again, like people want someone maybe 5 years older than them, especially with the way that standards work. Even like getting your PE and the FE, like that's changed, right? So like
yes.
really a lot of people that are looking for mentorship, they're like, hey, I want a mentor to help me get through the PE. Like, so that's all things that they want someone current.
Right on point. And I used age as a discriminator in terms of the conversation, only because in some cases the old dinosaurs do have perspective, but don't know how to relate to the individuals who would benefit from that perspective, and that's a real shame. I laughed earlier when you were talking about life members. I is one now. I wasn't then, but I is one now. And I know that as somebody who, when I was in an academic role, we talked about people going into high schools and trying to attract students into this profession, not as mentors, just as role models. And some people did pretty well at it, but the vast majority of them, I wanted to build a silo around them and let them nowhere near anybody under the age of 40. just just know. I mean, just know that they're not capable of relating. And I think that's really the big thing. And as you're saying, I think it's funny somebody thinks that 11 years is too much of a lifespan to be able to relate, but it's that relation piece. It's being able to be empathetic towards the individual that you're mentoring or going to be mentored by in both regards. It's a conduit. It flows both directions.
Mhm.
Mentors learn from the mentees and vice versa. And I think that you make a horrendously valid point. Is there's no set answer. It's a matter of finding somebody that, I mean, you don't want to be mentored by somebody that doesn't know. That's a waste of effort. But finding somebody that does know, but at the same time can relate to what you're going through or have gone through, I think is extremely, extremely important. Excellent point. Uh, One other aspect of this, and this really comes in part from where I have been in the mentoring that I have done over the years. Have you sensed in the program and the data that you've collected, the observations you've made, that an individual should limit themselves as to how many mentees they take on, or should mentees be looking for mentors that have 50 mentees or no mentees? Just, again, boundary conditions. What's your perspective on the number of mentees? And I realize it's relative and there's a number of factors, but elaborate, if you will, what you see.
Yes. So, at least within the ASCE program, we say that mentees should only request one mentor. And that's kind of the rule just because there's limited mentors in the program. As far as mentors go, we have not put a cap on that. That's something that people can put their own cap on. But it's really just what you're willing to take on. Again, if you know you have a busy, demanding job, maybe one or two or three. If you're retired, maybe like the individual that I mentioned earlier, he's retired, or an academic, like maybe you want to take on more, or they can help with some of the research you're doing. So it really just depends on the individual for the most part. But again, I think it's like with everything. And I know you volunteer a lot. There's many people I'm sure that are listening to this. Like, I would say, like, you should only take on so many volunteer roles. But like, again, that's your comfort level, like whatever you're willing to take on.
And I think that's really up to the individual in
Mhm.
most cases. And I think that's the way you've managed it. If you think you can do three, then do three, but at the same time recognizes your responsibility for doing three. You don't take on three and ignore two of the three, or ignore them all for that matter. This isn't about recognition. It's about being a benefit, of being service to the profession, giving back for us older folks, for us dinosaurs. Uh, if we have somebody that listens, then that's great. I was in a mentoring program this past, an academic mentoring program. Uh, Institution reached out, wanted alumni to mentor, and I felt I was overqualified. Just kidding, and signed up, and they gave me two mentees, which I thought was great. And I reached out immediately to the mentees to establish contact. I had this vision of getting together periodically, maybe at Starbucks, maybe at the union, maybe even at the house, to talk and relate and whatever else. And in this case, both mentees were computer science nerds. Nothing against computer science. My daughter does data science. She's also a professional geologist, but that's another story. But the idea was that they couldn't relate to me, and the people that
Mhm.
did the assignments, I think mostly they probably stuck it in a hat and drew two names out, or either that or they gave it up to AI and AI screwed the pooch. Whatever the deal, it was a flop. And they wrote back towards the end of the mentoring cycle and said, "What do you think of the program?" I said, "Don't bother ever asking me again." I mean, I put in the energy. I was willing to do it, and nothing ever happened. Never heard from them. To which, of course, they apologized and said, "Well, we'd like you to continue." And I said, "Read the first email." I said, "Don't ask me again." Yeah, no. I mean, I've gone on to other things. When you figure out how to do a mentoring program, give me a call. And by the way, here's a young lady at ASCE that can tell you everything about running mentoring programs. And you think I'm lying to you, but I'm not. I actually gave them your name and said, you need to reach out to somebody that knows how to do mentoring because it's obvious you don't. Not you, them. So anyway, it is what it is. And we had a pretty good, you know, the mentoring I've had with ASC has been really good, and I've had good experience. I've done other mentoring as well, both as in my academic position and through various avenues. That's really good. In terms of being a good mentor, do you have a rule of thumb as to how much time one should? I mean, that's always seems to be the question. You know, you want to be an officer in an organization. This is how much time it's going to take. You want to be engaged in a volunteer activity. This is how much time it's going to take. Well, this is a volunteer activity. Any rule of thumbs? Any guesses? Or is this one of those crapshoots where you make it into what you make it into?
Well, I think we recommend that people meet twice a month for 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
Is what I think the recommendation with ASE is, if I
And
remember
that seems to be
correctly.
effective based on your observations of all the mentors that you've got.
I mean, it seems to be, from my experience as well, like with my mentoring relationships, that seems like it seems to be the sweet spot. Not too much time, not too little time. I know originally, like when I had met with mentors in the past, an hour long conversation is kind of a long time. And honestly, like I'm kind of the mindset, like if a meeting can't happen in 30 minutes, shouldn't happen. 30 minutes, keep it at 30.
Um, yeah, that I go back to the first ASC mentoring we did. We used we met once a month routinely for an hour, and then it was ad hoc after that. If something comes up, give me a call. If something comes up, we'll set a meeting. If you have another question, or if what we left, you know, what your takeaways were after our conversation. And we usually actually did break it into two segments. The first 30 minutes was, so what have you done since the last time we met? How much progress have
Mm-hmm.
you made? Are there new projects? Are there new problems? Are there new opportunities? And then the second half was, well, now that we've reestablished the baseline for where you are today, let's talk about where we'd like to see you be, where you'd like to see you be the next time we get together. And we go on. And I mentioned, and I was not being insincere when I said this individual found himself having to deal with an owner of a company, one of the owners of a company, who uh, I don't think he knew he was a bigot, but he was. And we negotiated and navigated a process where, with the help of HR, we actually remediated him. He didn't intend to be a bigot; it was just the way he was, and he didn't understand the ramifications of what he was saying and doing, and how it was impacting his relationships and the company's relationships with clients. And this individual stepped in and was recognized for helping, and the individual was appreciative. But that certainly wasn't part of the game plan. We were focused on the mentee, not the owners, but it's what it is. Okay. Um, at the same time, as a pivot, you, some people reached out from ASCE last year, as I recall, it was about this time, and said, "Hey, we're putting together a new program. Would you be willing to identify somebody that you would mentor as part of this program and help us develop some metrics and some materials and some, I'm not going to say a guide, but maybe a little more formal program in which
Mm-hmm.
mentors and mentees can function?" And as you said, I have this propensity for volunteering for things. So I said, sure. And then they turn and say, well, fine, you go find your own mentee and then we can talk. And I did. And I found a young lady that had graduated from my undergraduate program. And actually was going through that one went off the rails quickly because she was going through some very interesting life-changing issues. She had just changed locations, was working with a whole new office, whole new career path. She was working towards getting her license and ran into a number of problems, which were outside of what the mentoring program was geared up to. But it worked real
Mhm.
well as far as getting us established and moving forward. That experience for us really worked well. I don't know if you're at a point. I haven't seen much since September. I guess we closed out my phase of the work with that program. I haven't seen much more from it. I don't know if you have, for that matter. I imagine you have. Can you share how's that project come out? Where's it going? What's the program about? Could you kind of thumbnail that for us, please?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So that I believe is what you're referring to is a project that the Committee for Professional Advancement was
Yep.
working on the mentored experience.
Yep.
They had
Well,
done a
hold
lot
up.
of work, and I
Can I
know that
interrupt?
they,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt you, Terza, just a second. The way you're framing this suggests to me, which I was not aware of, and I had gotten other information, you weren't involved in this project?
I was.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, I had been aware of some conversations,
Okay.
and I had been brought in on it. So like
Okay.
definitely had been involved in a lot of conversations about it, but I
Okay.
haven't heard anything in a long time.
Okay.
So maybe that's on me that I should follow up and see see where it is.
Well, it
Um,
wasn't your project. So, I mean, actually, in all honesty, because it's my podcast, I get to ask the questions, and I wanted to know actually where was it?
no,
How's it going? Is it being launched? What's the deal? And I was kind of hoping you'd be
the
the answer, and obviously, you're a bit in the shadows as I am. I won't say dark. I'll just
I'm
say shadows.
I'm pretty much in this. The funny thing about that project though is because we did like think about that in relation to like the mentored experience and what they were trying to do versus like ASC mentor match. And so like kind of like are these conflicting programs or the
Right?
same program? Like what's the overlap? Like we did have a lot of conversations about that originally. And I think the thought with the mentored experience piece was that it was more technical mentoring versus what we're trying to do with the society level program, right? Like again,
Yeah.
they would both be society level programs, but it's more personal, professional mentoring.
Right.
And then what they were trying to do at CPA was more technical.
Okay.
And so that was kind of like the difference there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I saw an awful lot of overlap. I know the areas that they were using in the platform last year as part of the beta
yeah,
process was talking about communication and management, which are life skills for young professionals that we talk about on this podcast. How to become a more effective manager? How do I work on my communication skills? How do I develop that empathy? How do I listen uh, and talk? How do I know that what I'm saying is being heard the way I intend it to be heard? And so feedback, feed forward, understanding the principles of communicational management, everything from asset management to time management to personal management, were all part of that conversation. So but yeah, it had, I would frame it as, it looked to me like it had a lot of metrics to address postgraduate BOK stuff.
it was all be that so that committee is very focused on the body of knowledge for
Right.
anyone that
For those of
is
you not painfully initiated, that's what BOK stands for. That's ASCE
yes, but
speak
that
for what's it mean to be an engineer or a civil engineer? What's the body of knowledge, and the rubrics associated with that are depth and breadth in a number of areas, not just technical, professional, leadership, and all the rest. And some of this they expect universities to do. I'm not going to comment on that, uh, whether they do it or not. But some of it they expect to be done by the pre-professional, and others to be done by the work environment that they're in, the employer. And going back, I'm going to spin back around on that context. it's important, I think, for individuals to have the support they need. To have a good home life is part of that process.
Mhm.
I tell students in order for them to be successful, they need to be healthy, they need to feel secure, they need to feel valued, they need to exercise physically and mentally so they continue to grow physically and mentally and stay whole, and they need to engage. They need to connect, they need to network. And of course, that's where I get back to ASCE. As what's a better way for civil engineers to network and meet new people and share experiences and learn from others, and for that matter, develop a consortia of
Uh-huh.
friends if you have trouble that you can go to ask for help. That doesn't involve the person that's going to be writing a performance review in 3 months. It's a safer environment. So that's something I think is a really important part of that mentoring brings as well. That can bring, and peer to peer mentoring we haven't talked about at all, but that's another aspect of that. That's that shared experience mentoring. I know that you've been involved in mentoring in a lot of different ways. Do you think mentoring for, and I'm going to be really specific, do you think mentoring civil engineers is different than mentoring, easy for me to say, other young professionals and pre-professionals? Are civil engineers really that unique a bag of cats, or are we just same as everybody else when it comes down to professional growth and development?
I mean, so that's kind of like what I was leading to with that comment about the mentored experience, as far as what some of what ASC is working on, and some of that is what we shied away from within the big society level program. Right, was a lot of that is technical mentoring that needs to happen at your job, as far as like having that technical mentoring is like, okay, like these are the site designs, like even a wastewater engineer can't really mentor a structural engineer, right, on bridge design. And that's something that
I
needs to
hope not.
happen as far as your no. But that's part of the process, right, for your PE, like for your PE, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, because you sit on a licensure board, right,
Right.
with
Right.
Mississippi. So I mean, that's part of like you need to show like, hey, these are the people that mentored me. This is my technical mentored experience. That's completely different. So I mean, that is something that's really um, something at the society level when we talked about doing the ASC program. And I don't know if you know John Durant, back in the day, like
Yeah.
had talked about that. And
Yep.
so again, we were like, no, like ASC cannot support that type of experience, right? Like we cannot stamp off like who's doing technical mentoring with some of those people, because that, I mean, that's just, there's so much
Where we need to
liability and
triple
risk
the
there.
operating budget, bring a whole bunch of engineers into the office to do it. Yeah,
Or
that's
like
true.
or someone like me should not be running the mentoring program if that's what I'm doing, right? Like, because I have no technical experience, I'm not an engineer. um and I mean, and that's fine, but again, the benefit that we have with the society level is like you were talking about, is like your employer, when you talk about like, okay, your performance review, I want to ask for a raise, or even like I'm having a struggle with communication with my boss, like those are things that maybe I don't even want to, like sections and branches also within ASCE, like your local groups also have mentoring programs. Like Philadelphia section has a great one. The Orange County group, I think, also has a great
They
mentoring
do. Yeah.
like there's so many really great sections and branches within ASC that really good mentoring programs. But maybe I don't want to participate in a mentoring program at a local level because whoever's mentoring might know my boss. And if I have a problem with my boss, or even a coworker or someone else, like maybe I want to talk to, you know, Dennis in Mississippi. I might be like, hey, Dennis, my boss is a jerk. Like, can you help me with
They
this?
all are. But yeah.
Right? Like,
And I know your
like
boss,
that.
and he's a jerk, but that's okay.
He's a Chanel. But you know what I mean? Like,
Sorry,
so
Tom.
again, like, that's kind of something that we wanted to provide at the society level. That's like, hey, like if you don't want to keep it too close to home, I can go and ask engineer. And again, like maybe if I'm just graduated from West Virginia University and I'm moving to, LA. Maybe I want to talk to people in the LA branch. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the thought with having, so there's mentoring programs for all shapes and sizes. But again, civil engineers, that technical mentoring bit that's what makes mentoring different with civil engineers, to bring it back to your question. Sorry, that was
No.
I totally went on a
That circular thought process that works really well. Use it frequently. Most people heads just spin, but anyway, that's right on track. And I agree. I mean, I obviously I had an expectation of what you were to say, and that's why I asked the question. I couldn't agree more. Uh, in that myriad of mentoring, what mentoring represents, it does take on different facets, and there's different things that people need help with. So you don't look for a technical mentor or mentee to simply be the same as what would be a professional mentor, um, or even a workplace mentor. Professional development in terms of leadership skills, as opposed to a workplace mentor. How do I navigate the fact that I'm bald and there's a prejudice against being bald? How do I negotiate and have this conversation to say, hey, I'm still capable, or whatever it may be? There's a lot of things that people deal with in our profession, in the professions, plural, in the AC profession and the others as well. And we don't have to go it alone. I think the biggest problem we're dealing with today is particularly post pandemic. The past 5 years, people have been isolated, and technology came along as this was transitioning into our daily lives that allowed us to become even more. We were already even more isolated. We were already talking about the fact that people would rather send you a text than have a conversation, because I can tell you what I'm thinking and we don't get into a reflective conversation about it. It's simple, quick. I've done my job. I move on to the next things. But that's isolating. That doesn't engage. That doesn't resolve. That just puts stuff out there. It's sometimes just noise. And I think the connectivities and the ability to connect with other people that have other life experiences helps us become more people. I said at the beginning of the show, it's really about developing empathy and understanding how, both for the mentor and the mentee, so that I can take that empathy and relate to the situation I'm dealing with right now. Everybody showed up at the same meeting, but they all got there at a different path with different baggage and different burnt toast. And how do we deal with that? How do I get heard? How do I be impactful? How do I make change? How do I make sure that at the end of the day we do good, and in doing good do well as well? So yeah, that's my mother. She was a teacher and gave me a hard time about saying I did good today, and you could tell in her eyes I messed the English language up. Anyway, good deal. Well, we've run out of time, Tirza, at least for this. I don't think either of us are going to leave the planet anytime soon, but for right now, I think we need to wrap. So I apologize we couldn't continue to talk, and unfortunately my glass is empty, so that drink I had at the bar is time to replenish it. So, but at the same time, before we part, any last thoughts? Any parting pearls? Ha! I told you I bring. By the way, folks, Pearl is Tirza's daughter. Excellent gymnast. She's working really hard. I don't know if the goal is Olympics, but she's having fun at it. Mom is too, and that's as personal as we're going to get on this episode. Pearl's wisdom.
She needs a good mentor on empathy right now. So that's mom's current struggle, is
Okay.
some of her friendships. I'm like, be nice to people. So
that's
anyways,
the competitor.
yeah, she's something else. But no, I will say, like, closing thoughts, like, if anyone has any thoughts about mentoring or, trying to find support, I'm always here. You're welcome to reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name's not too rare, or my name is fairly rare. So you should be able to find me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out and talk more. So
Well, and yeah, absolutely. And thanks. And let me amplify that plug by saying that Tirza is part of the ASCE staff. And I will say, as a past president of ASCE, that ASCE has the best staff in the world. They're committed to the professional, they're committed to the profession, they're committed to success of others and of the organization, of the society, CAPS, for those of you checking my grammar. And as such, uh, I've always been quite proud to be associated with people like you, Tirza, because of that professionalism and because of that commitment. And I appreciate it. For those of you that want to be come on board and get to know Tirza and the other people in the mentoring program, or for that matter, the other aspects of ASCE, it's almost impossible to find them on the website www.asce.org. Duh. And don't put the duh or you may get lost. Who knows where you'll end up? But the idea is she's readily available. So reach out. And if you have trouble getting up with her, reach out to me and I'll facilitate a connection. Otherwise, I hope you found this conversation of value to your professional growth, your personal success. And until we get together the next time for another conversation about the 21st century engineer, take care and be safe.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Infrastructure Network.